Call this meeting of the Upshur County Board of Education to order. First order of business is to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Dr. Allman, if you would read our mission statement.
Okay, I'd be happy to. The mission of the Upshur County Schools is to provide academic preparation, social responsibility, employability, and a desire of lifelong learning.
Thank you, Dr. Allman. Would the clerk note that all members are present with the exception of Mr. Suter? And we'll move on. The approval of the agenda or agenda adjustments. And it looks like we do have some adjustments.
We have some additions to the personnel agenda, and those are in front of you, and the changes that were made are in italicized. We have a few resignations coming in.
Do I have a motion that we approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the July 24th regular meeting. That's attachment A. Is there any questions or anything about any corrections? Have a motion to approve those as presented?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll now move on to unfinished business, facilities update. Mr. Moran?
I'll start with the MIP project because that's the big one, and we're getting closer and closer to our deadline for 3 of the schools, which is this Friday. Rock Cave, everything's going pretty well. Fire alarm inspection will start at 9 o'clock on Friday morning in the sense of testing it and making sure it works, and they'll be able to, once that happens and approval, they will be padding out tomorrow, which means they'll be basically, everything will be back in and ready to rock and roll. We'll just be doing the cleaning part, which we have. We'll actually have 4 people up there tomorrow, and then throughout the rest of the week to make sure that hopefully it's in 80% shape by the end of Friday. French Creek's the same way. French Creek will give us a little bit more time next week. We'll have, moving people around and whatnot, but same way, their fire alarm will be tested after Rock Cave, so it'll probably be about 10-ish, 10:30 to move on that. And then Tennerton will follow right after that one. Tennerton's moved along very well. They've actually padded out about 4 or 5 classrooms. They're done. So we'll be able to do some, the cleanliness part of it is really the demanding side of it because of shelves and, upper areas that, just have collected dust over the time frame of what they're doing work-wise. And then Union will also be tested sometime probably Friday afternoon. The fire alarm is installed for the school, and they've, as I think I stated before, they've worked down the long hallway as you enter and down the corridor of the right side of the building. They're going to start on Monday and finish up the last, I think it's 4 or 5 classrooms plus the computer lab and the gym and the commons area and kitchen, or cafeteria in the kitchen. They're going to knock that out all next week and be done and out of the school, completed, finished by Friday the 17th. And will not have to be back. So I know at one point we had discussions about having that completed before our August 10th, and they'll actually be done a week after. And it is an alternate school, so they are ahead of schedule in that regard. From that point, we have Washington to start and Academy to start, and we'll be able to sit down Friday with a schedule and come up with how we're going to operate those. Knowing that school starts, the 23rd, so we'll make that work out. As far as Hodgesville, we're still waiting on word. Mr. Lamper and I talked today and stated that if we don't hear something by Thursday, we'll make a phone call because I believe it's close to about midway point in the application process as far as date-wise, and so we'll be able to touch base with that. if you noticed a little bit, the gym floors in the high school and the middle school are getting redone. If you popped your head in at all, it's pretty amazing to see a floor that was painted at one point not have anything on it. It's pretty spectacular to look at, and it's kind of nice. And then you go, okay, now it's got to come back with something so that they can do their activities. So that is moving along. We're going to be delayed a little bit because we just had some minor issues with some sanding that they couldn't get some of the stuff off, and they had to rework their little calibrations and things. But it's really kind of cool. The middle school would probably get done a lot faster than what the high school will. And they're actually, this morning they buffed out the floor, and I didn't stop. I was going to, but I got delayed. They should have laid out their tape so that they can start to paint either tomorrow afternoon. Most likely will be what happens. So it's kind of exciting. Not that, you know, it's exciting for me. It might not be exciting for other people, but it's exciting for me to see it because it is kind of neat. The paving of the driver's ed course is done, finished up, and it's kind of nice. It's different. You know, you can drive and not hit something, whether it be the tree across the the way after you hit that pothole. But it's done and it looks pretty good. And I'm meeting with Mr. Gillespie tomorrow morning to talk about what they would like to have back on as far as paint wise. There's some things that they wanted at the time to possibly be removed and what they'd like to add back, so we're going to work on that tomorrow. Cleaning up of the outside areas of the schools, you can probably tell that some of that's happened, and a lot of areas are looking a little bit different than what they were before, and that will continue throughout, and you'll gradually see it and notice it. The Hodgesville office has been moved. Mrs. Mickle now has her own office. The only thing that we're lacking in her area is a phone line, which Glenna Clutter knows about, and she's going to fire that off and make that happen, so that'll be spot on at the end of that. And we still have some minor things with the Title I room and moving some other little oddball things. They're nothing big deal that is holding anything up. As far as the insurance stuff that we had with the storm damage, we got those estimates back in. Mr. Carver has those. And that was all very positive. I'm in the process. I've ordered the exhaust fans as of today for the roof of the high school, and I will have the contractors out to look at what we need to do, if we need to just patch or if we need to replace sections of the high school roof, because we still have some small minor leaks that aren't, you can't get them all. You don't know where they all are. You get lucky at times and then you don't. So but nothing that's gonna hold us up, but we'll get that accomplished and moving forward. That gentleman will be with me probably Friday, if not Monday morning, and we'll start maybe Saturday too. We might start some work then. And as far as painting, we're still doing it. The outside of the, one that you can visually see right now is the outside of the football stadium. They've done a tremendous job in sprucing that up. But we still have some work to do at Washington, which we're starting tomorrow. We finished up Rock Cave today because of being able to. And then we'll have a little bit at Union and some little pieces at French Creek, and we're pretty much right on schedule and task and time-wise, and they'll be done. So that's, I think, all I've got on my notes.
Do we know how long it'll take on the exhaust fans?
It'll be about 4 weeks till we get them here.
Did you mention anything about the sewer system at Union?
No, I did not. The sewer system at Union is, the package plant is installed in place and will be operational before school starts. It looks tremendous. Not that you want to go stare at it or something, but it is absolutely fantastic of what they've done and how it is. So that is, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. That's one thing I have.
Thank you, Keith.
I'm as excited as you are, Keith. You and me may be the only ones.
I know, but I'm telling you, it's from what we had,
pretty amazing what's been done.
To what we have, what we're getting is just, it's only going to enhance what we do up there with the flow. Leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
You're welcome.
More ways than one.
we'll move on to item number 7, financials, budgetary items, attachment B, and the payment of bills. George, do you have anything you want to add to those? Or
There's a few budget items. I hope that's the first of many to come in the next couple of weeks as we start to get grant awards in for our various grants that we've already had committed. And as they come in, we supplement them into the budget.
do I hear a motion to approve the financial items as presented? Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have some out-of-county attendance requests, and then also a contract between the Upshur County Board of Education and Upshur Human Resources. You have something you want to
The
share
contract, the out-of-district and in-district routine, and you can see what those are. Those are students that want to come to Upshur County, or those that, for other reasons, are going to school elsewhere. But the main item there is the contract between Upshur Board of Education and DHHR. That's to assist with the special needs program in our pre-K handicapped.
Okay.
And that's an annual contract.
Do I hear a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move on. The Buchanan Academy 5th grade curriculum delivery. Mrs. Skidmore.
I'm
There she is.
over here in the chair. And because no one can see me, I will stand up and move.
At least stand up.
Yeah, well, I'm going to hand you these wonderful, nice little yellow folders. And yellow is a positive color, so we're hoping to get all the positive vibes we can. But I did ask as many of our 5th grade teachers who could attend to attend this evening, in case there were questions there, the individuals where this proposal originated and those that will be putting it into action. And we did have one teacher who her husband is having some health concerns and she couldn't make it. And then Miss Gaunt, who is our newest 5th grade teacher who's been involved in this proposal, she had a previous engagement tonight. So we ended up with Mr. Lamb and Mrs. Hoover. So, but everyone in our 5th grade team has worked on this. Inside the folder, on the left-hand side is probably the information you're going to want to know. On the right-hand side is more supplemental and things that I have referenced in this proposal. 5th grade is a little different than the rest of K through 4 elementary, and this idea originated back in February in part of our collabs that we were having. And our Title I special ed teachers and our 5th grade homeroom teachers were saying, if we could only do this, if I only had more time for this. And a lot of positive things come out of that collaboration, but this, I think, is one of the more positive collaborative efforts. Even if we don't receive approval to do this, it is something that has been very positive and a very team-building event for our 5th grade. Essentially, we're proposing to create a team approach. You might hear it called departmentalization, but that's not really how we're thinking of it, because we're not proposing to create a science department or a history department or social studies department. We're proposing to create all of our 5th graders as one group, and our teachers teach as a team. Mrs. Hoover would teach all 5th graders social studies. Mr. Lamb would teach all 5th graders science. Miss Gaunt would teach all English. And Mrs. Turner would teach all of the math. And then the children would stay with their homeroom the rest of the time and receive all of the other instruction. We believe that this would give them an opportunity not just to build relationships with different members of our staff. We do have a lot of children who are lacking role models, and we believe that the more opportunities for mentors and building relationships, the better. But we also believe some of those 21st century skills can really be built, teaching our students responsibility, collaboration, those types of activities. So we're excited about that. On the piece of paper, you'll find a very quick overview. I didn't want to leave out any subject, so any subject not specifically mentioned will be handled by the homeroom teachers in time not set aside for this rotation. Our rationale is essentially that we are going to give them the opportunity to move more often, which is something that the Department of Education from the state level is asking, that we build more opportunities for movement into our day, and this will allow movement. The classrooms are closely related. You know, they're all on the same floor, but it will give a chance for them to get up, kind of change scenery, change a frame of mind. And for me, that's very important. I really like the opportunity to get up and move rooms. We looked at it that way. We're also looking at building the relationships, 21st century skills, but we don't want to lose the project nature that our 5th grade teachers are known for. We've done novel projects in the past and some, really great units where a student would have received an English grade and a social studies grade and perhaps a math grade. And all of the teachers will have access to all of the different grades. And, we're going to give them an opportunity to be collaborative. So if Mrs. Hoover is doing a social studies project, she will give Miss Gaunt an opportunity to contribute to it and then, receive it and take a grade for English. And the students will know that, up front. So nothing will change in that respect. We'll still have the projects going. In a way, we'll have more input into the projects because we'll have more teachers involved in them than just one classroom teacher. We did consider special ed because we do have special ed students at Buchanan Academy. We will have 2 teachers, special ed teachers, on the same floor. They will provide the GEE minutes or the SEE minutes, so they'll work collaboratively in the classrooms during this rotation, or they'll pull the students into their classroom, whatever the IEP requires. We looked into precedents. We didn't want to come in and say we want to do this and no one else does this. We have found schools of similar size in Harrison County, in Mon County, in Randolph County, and even in Lewis County that either do this at this time or have done it at one time. Teachers rate this very highly. Teachers who have taught within this type of a team approach are very positive. I was unable to locate any data. Teachers would tell me, oh yeah, I think the grades were better, I think the interest was higher in science or the interest in social studies, but any hard data I was unable to find as far as does it improve test scores, does it impede. I wanted you also to know that we have been discussing this. We didn't just decide the other day to come to the board. We've started back in February. We've talked about it for a good while. And our leadership team, curriculum team, they have been very involved in the process. And I was impressed during our leadership team meetings that the teachers that were most interested and had the most questions were those that taught the younger children. I guess because they couldn't formulate in their mind what it would look like. And they were the most critical of this proposal as, the 5th grade teachers were putting it together. They were very critical in the sense of, are you sure that'll work? Well, how would you do this? And what came out of leadership team was the end of May, leadership team overwhelmingly decided to endorse it. That is one of the things I included on the other side was the letter from leadership team because it explains why they felt that this was a positive move for our school. On the reverse side of the proposal, that's just the logistics, which teachers will teach what. There will be 4 45-minute rotations built into the schedule, and those will take place from about 9:25 until 12:25. They'll rotate through as a classroom unit. So Mrs. Hoover's homeroom will go to Mr. Lamb and then to Miss Gaunt and then to Miss Turner and then back to Mrs. Hoover. So we won't have mass confusion when we're doing this rotation. They'll just move as a group throughout the hallway. And our special ed teachers that will, let's say we have a child who has special ed minutes for English, but he would need to complete the rest of the rotations with his classroom. We will have that special ed teacher located right there in that area with them, so he'll just go a different direction and then he'll come back. So we've thought about the logistics, and we actually moved the special ed rooms up to that level so that if we're able to do this, they're already there. We have already scheduled their planning periods prior to 9:25 and after 1:35 so that we will not have PE or art or music scheduled during that time. We're going to give collaborative opportunities, not just things that the county would schedule, accrued time days or anything like that. We're going to look at, we have the opportunity to have 3 of our teachers at any one time already having a common planning, and that will occur in different combinations. We're also looking at scheduling our developmental guidance at a time so that once a month, perhaps maybe twice a month if we could make it happen, all 4 teachers would have a common planning time so that they could talk about tests and projects and really make this work, because we don't want it to be something that we say, oh, this is going to be great, and then fall apart in October. We're committed to making sure that we follow through on this and that it stays on track. And we're also going to assign collaboratively homework, tests, and projects. We do not want someone to come home on Monday and say, Mom, I have 4 tests tomorrow. So, we're going to design those just like you would if it was in an all-inclusive classroom. You wouldn't give all the tests on the same day. And the last thing, and I put it last because it's probably the most important thing, not only will we have to sell this proposal to professionals or into the people in this room, but the most important people are the parents, because if they don't believe in it, then it's, we're going to struggle. And the first thing we would do is to have a parent meeting as a part of our open house activities for 5th graders. And the 5th grade parents would meet as a group, as an entire 5th grade, meet all of the teachers, learn about the expectations, learn about the rotations, and then have the opportunity to do the traditional open house activities, meet the teacher, see your classroom, see your locker. We know that there are parents who won't come to open house, so we're proposing to then send all the information home to them. And in addition to that, continue that with a weekly newsletter. And the parents are going to know to expect it because we're going to tell them at open house, you're going to get a weekly newsletter. We're also going to post that online. And all of our 5th grade teachers also use Edline. So these things will all be in addition to what we're already doing. I think it's a really positive move for our school, and I believe that it is something, our LSIC, I remember I was very moved by Mr. Zuliani's presentation last fall, saying, there are great things ahead, and he hopes not to have a vanilla report. This is one of the things that I think in the direction our school is moving, trying to find innovative, different ways, rethinking some old ways to make our school really shine. And I said I'd be short, so that is short and to the point. And I brought experts to answer questions.
No, it's just informative. There's some policy. They wanted the board support.
If I may, one of the reasons we chose English as one of the subject areas is looking at our online writing assessment scores, sentence structure, word usage and mechanics and grammar. It's our weakest area where the majority of our students score a 2 in. So we felt that we really needed to focus and work on that, because then the writing across the curriculum, then we can take what they're learning in English class and fine tune it in their writing.
I've been impressed with the process that they've gone through to arrive at this. They started way back when, in the wintertime. You said February, I think is what you said. Mr. Dilley has been attending their leadership meetings, and this has been a progression of building the program, building the trust, and building the support amongst the staff. And as a matter of fact, we have had some parents already. The word must have leaked, because we have had some parents that are supportive of it, and we're looking forward to it. I just think the fact that it's coming from the staff. It's okay. It wasn't a criticism. I just think that the fact that it came from the teachers and came from the school, came through the leadership team, the curriculum team, is a real plus. And they've been struggling over the last several years with student achievement, and this is a way to try something new and to try something different.
I was very impressed with the leadership team and the way they came to consensus on this to support it. It was really a nice process to watch.
I think 5th grade's a hard grade anyway, and I think this collaborative movement around is something that can help them not only in the 5th grade, but when they go to middle school, because it's such culture shock when they move into that middle school, not used to doing that and having that collaboration a lot. So very good.
It sounds a lot like graduate school. I'm in medical school with 75 people, and the different professors come to you and teach in a room, or you go to a room, but you move together as a unit. And if you do it at the higher education level with collaboration, then it's good to start in 5th grade.
And it assists with making everybody responsible for everybody. Mm-hmm. It's common support, common what can we do to make this better. And everybody's taking responsibility for the learning of 100 5th graders, or however the number is, right around 100.
I remember the dean actually said to us, he said, there's 75 of you here. 4 years from now, we want 75 doctors. And and it made us feel safe. And so I hope that's the student feeling too that they get.
Good. Thank you.
Are we definitely going to do this?
As long as there are no objections and Mr. Lampinen doesn't tell us no.
There's no policy or approval that says we have to do this configuration one way or the other. Several years ago, we had a few schools that were did somewhat of team teaching, and then they moved away from that. And I think that was actually at the directive of the central office at that time. It wasn't necessarily school initiated. I think it was more of a blanket decision. So what I shared with them is if it comes through the curriculum team, get their support, then we certainly would allow them to try it. Unless, like I said, unless the board had a real extreme aversion to it. But there's nothing that says we have to do it this way. We leave it to the teams to.
Well, I think that having our job postings always been for self-contained classrooms.
They were. And these are still be constituted as self-contained classrooms because they're going to get the bulk of the reading instruction with that same teacher, but they're going to move around in that 45-minute block period. So they are self-contained teachers, but they're not under the certification patterns are still able to do this.
And that's not going to impact your the time you have to have for reading. That
there are no minutes for reading.
The policy 2510 eliminated those requirements. However, and these folks know this, that doesn't mean they can just limit the time way down. They're still going to be responsible for the strategic,
and if you look at our
reading program.
Proposal for outside of that rotation period, you see it has the reading, the DI, the intervention, math, differentiated instruction as well as intervention. So the bulk of math instruction will not solely fall on Kathy Turner's shoulders because we will be addressing primarily looking at West Test scores and what areas that were weak and trying to build those up. Because it's hard to remediate and teach new content all at the same time. So that will allow us the opportunity to do that as well.
And that's where the logistics they really have to focus on the logistics. When you have that struggling reader that needs the second tier, we have to be sure that that's still happening.
Yes, and not mentioned in this, we do have 2 Title I teachers who have worked with 5th grade for several years, and they're still going to provide the tiered support for the children. They'll provide that tiered support. We actually talked this morning not only outside of that, but there is also a need for content-based comprehension strategies and things like that within the science and social studies, because these children are reading to learn at that point, and working with that. So we have a lot of options for their tiered services.
We find that 5th graders really struggle with nonfiction comprehension. So if you have your tier instruction during science or social studies and supplementing what's going on in the classroom, then that just can bolster the comprehension of those content areas.
That's good. There's a lot of work went into it. Thank you. There's no other questions. We'll move on to item number 10. Next Generation or Common Core. Mr. Heyman, Mr. Wager.
Thank you, Mr. Dilley has some material to pass out for you. Do a little follow-up on what I talked about earlier in the, just after Christmas, I believe. We formulated our teams and sent them to the Teacher Leadership Institute in Morgantown. The month of July was pretty busy. We had 16 people trained to deliver content, next generation content standards and objectives in the following areas: K through 12 social studies, science and art, and with that we had a separate team for 9th grade which addressed language arts and math, had a team for 4th and 5th grade basically addressing language arts and math, and then we had a team in 1st grade. So those people completed all the training, and while they were there for 6 days. The only team that did not have 6 days was the social studies and arts and science team. They had 5 days. So with that, part of the program was come up with a plan to deliver next generation content standards and objectives when you go back to your counties. And we were very fortunate that Upshur County had members for every team. There were some counties who did not have team members, period. There were some counties that did not, or some teams, institutes that did not even have but one person representing their county, and a lot of times they didn't know why they were there. Our team members knew that they were going there to be trained to come back and train our teachers and roll out just as we did with kindergarten last year. And we kept that rolling all through the school year. Basically, it's a 6-step process. We formulate the teams, we complete the training and do the planning on site there, and then we come back and share the information at the Principals Academy. We spent a couple hours on that last week going through everything that's on the website from the state, and we shared some of that with you back in January. There's a multitude of materials there. Basically, you could teach any subject with basically what's available on the website if you took the time and went through. And a lot of times those lesson plans are already spelled out for the teachers. The objectives are there. So it fits right in with what the 5th grade is doing next door by doing unit activities, project-based learning, and merging a lot of different subject areas together, which generates a lot more interest with the students. The next step was come together with all the teams and forge the county plan, and that's what you have before you is the information from the county plan, how we propose to roll those objectives out. And first thing, we'll be starting out with Staff Development Week next week, not next week on the 20th, excuse me. After that, we'll continue into the school year. And if you look, what we're proposing is working 6 hours of training, and we've already had that in the schedule for Monday on the 20th. We'll be working with language, arts, and math, and then social studies people will be doing separate areas also, in addition to, because we're hitting the key areas first, which would be language, arts, and math. Looking at the timeline and for the activities, if you go to the second page, focus on the crosswalks of the next generation CSOs and how they differ from what we're doing now, because they are different. They're different levels when things are introduced. It's more at a level of student readiness on some lower level skills at the lower levels of kindergarten through 3rd grade. And they are aligned to the Common Core standards. And the team members will be demonstrating some of the different project type activities that we learned in the training in July and share that with teachers. And they'll be doing that throughout the year, and we'll be doing that not only on the first day of Staff Development Week, we'll be doing that throughout the year. And the schedule that we've worked out is to utilize our ISE days. We have 2 hours every other month to utilize that time. But we also are working the way we did with kindergarten last year. On the off months, do 2 hours also in the evening to keep things rolling. And the state has proposed a schedule of webinars with us to share things throughout the state level with each county. So we'll be meeting, and that schedule is not totally finalized. They haven't told us when they're going to have the webinars, so we kind of took a shot in the dark from kindergarten, and we're thinking the third Thursdays will be the day that we'll be doing that. So basically, the continuity of the training will start the 20th and move right on through each month all next year as we roll out. And we'll be also sharing with the different grade levels that weren't in the training, so they get an idea of exactly the approach for teaching that we have been trained to do. Are there any questions? Okay, Mr. Wager's going to share with you how this folds into the assessment program. And as you can see, some of the things we've talked about in the last 2 years, 3 years, everything is starting to come together. It's starting, the picture's starting to get clear, and you can see the state has a focus on what we're doing. Thank you.
And the only thing that I would add is that we're going to have 2 years now, and plus we'll be adding next year we'll be adding another grade to get into using the Common Core standards, which are online, all teachers have access to, and this will lead up to in 2 years we have only 2 more years of West Test, and then we'll be using what's called the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which is more on a national assessment type thing. which I think, if I'm correct, all but 6 states have signed up to do. Or maybe even less than that now, but and then that will take the place of the West test, and it'll be based on the new Common Core. So we're actually getting a little bit ahead because the way they're rolling it out, we actually didn't have to be having all of the grades that we're having doing it this year, doing it. What grades went this year? I can't remember. That didn't have to really do it
First, 4th, and 5th, and 9th grade.
Yeah, and that they didn't all have to roll it out till next year, but we're going to go ahead and start them this year so they can get used to it, start getting acclimated to it, and introducing it to their students. And then as we look at new adoptions, making sure that all of those go along with the Common Core standards. So it's going to be interesting. We're going next month to the state testing meeting, and I'll probably have a little bit more to share with you when I come back from that on the Smarter Balanced. They've only been giving us little glimpses of this for right now. Okay.
I might add just one thing on the Smarter Balance. I think Roy and I talked today that West Virginia has 4 people who are writing on that test group. So we're on the cutting edge with it from the state level.
And we start that Smarter Balance in 2 years?
2 years.
We have 2 more years of West test, this year and next year, and then
we start in 14.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. Okay, let's move on. Item 11, approval of the 12:30 dismissal dates. It's attachment H. Any questions or any comments?
You have a list of 4 dates there. We do have enough accrued time to do 4 collaboratives that much the same as we did last year. This is accrued time throughout the school year that allows us to have those early dismissals so that our teachers can work together in their schools, collaborating either on instruction as grade levels or as an entire school. But we feel very strongly that time was very beneficial last year. And then we also feel as strongly from the central office perspective is we're going to protect that time as much as possible so that can be the schools and the teachers' time to do those important collaborations. And you'll notice there's 4 of them. We are going to start in September because we just think that it's better to start at the beginning of the year and get things moving than to add one at the end of the year when things are maybe perhaps winding down a little bit. We had 4 last year, and our request is to do 4 more this year. And they are in opposite months of the already scheduled ISE days.
Do I hear a motion to approve the 12:30 dismissal dates?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We have the second reading of revised policy 4003, which is the attendance, and that's the attachment I. Is there anything we need to?
If you recall from our last meeting when we put this out on the table, the only change we're making is we're taking the exam portion out of our exam or out of our attendance policy. This is the second reading of this policy. We received no comments. It's been out on comment period since we introduced it. And so we'll put it out on comment again, and then we'll have the third reading at our next meeting.
All right. And we'll move on to personnel, attachment J, which you have received a revised version of that. Have time to look over that. Do I hear a motion to approve the personnel as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, and we'll move on to delegations, and it looks like we have delegation, Superior Vending, Mr. Patrick Martin.
I'm Steve Nanners. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Martin, who is also the president. And his comments have to deal with the item 15, which would be the approval of vendors for vending beverages and snacks for Upshur County schools. And I'm looking at my agenda, I don't have the attachment K, so I'm not sure what that attachment says. That may resolve some of the issues that Mr. Martin wishes to address the board with. Okay, and that's what he wishes to address the board about, or at least through me. My client has submitted a bid pursuant to the invitation for bid that was offered through Cynthia B. Nesselrode for the vending machines at the high school. And the criteria that was set forth in this bid was which vendor would submit the highest amount of commission that the Board of Education would receive from the sale of the products and the brand evaluation. When the bids were opened, there were only two providers that submitted bids with respect to the machines. One was Mr. Martin and Superior Vending, and then the other was Mr. Vend. My client submitted a bid with a proposal of 33% of the gross revenues that would go to the board and the school system. Mr. Vend was at 26.5. So based upon the criteria that was set forth in the invitation for bid, my client should be the one that the board is approving. Now the problem that developed was during this meeting, Mr. Vend, the man that was representing them, his name is Ed Amon, I believe, indicated to Ms. Nesselrode that he's been providing services to the middle school and to Washington District School, where he's providing snacks at a wholesale price. So those, I guess, are then being sold at the middle school snack bar and at whatever Washington District School is doing with that. Problem is, that's improper. That's a kickback. And what Mr. Vend has put on or set forth was that if he doesn't get this bid, he's no longer going to be able to supply the middle school and Washington District School with these snacks at wholesale prices. Now, that caused Ms. Nesselrode at this meeting to say, well, you know, we got to go back and look at this. You know, Mr. Vend's been providing these services. We really, you know, need to look at this, despite having indicated to my client that there's a complaint book of issues that Mr. Vend has I guess, been involved with, where people are upset with the services that he's been providing. So my concern is that this recommendation that's contained in agenda item or appendix K creates a recommendation that sets this up for the board approving some illegal conduct on behalf of Mr. Vend. And to the extent that there's this recommendation out there, we would like to be able to address the board with some type of an evidentiary hearing, put this out there and let the board hear all of this evidence that went on at this meeting before a decision is made. The recommendation as it stands right now is violating the bid itself, which was the amount of revenue that you would be able to make from the vendor. The 33% clearly was with us, and the only reason that I believe that it was changed, and my client believes it was changed, is because of this threat that Mr. Vend had made to not continue to supply the middle school and Washington District with these items at wholesale. So that is our issue here today, and to the extent that the board is then going to vote on and approve the item that's in the next agenda point, 16, and the recommendation of Mr. Vend, we would certainly object to that and ask the board conduct such proceedings to either approve the bid that was submitted by my client and met the criteria of the bid, or to not make a decision based on this recommendation and schedule this matter for further proceedings so we can present our case.
Some of the things that I just heard tonight were somewhat new to me. I wasn't sure about those things, but we did go through the bid process, and there was a criteria and a matrix that was when they evaluated the bids, and the score came out as Mr. Venn being the winning bidder on that. It's not necessarily, as my understanding, is not necessarily just the commission, but we try to provide that service of what our children need or would like. And the cost per item, I think, was one of the issues that was evaluated. George or Cindy, did...
In the meeting that he's referring to, that's not at all what I saw had happened. I think that we were only evaluating the bid that you're looking at has nothing to do with any of the separate schools. It's talking about what we have for vending machines. How it may have been interpreted what Mr. Venn said. I certainly didn't take it that way. I didn't see it as any threat or anything.
When we were sitting there, he said that you opened the bids and you read Pepsi first, Mr. Venn second, Coke, Superior, and then Coke. And he clearly was upset when we had a higher percentage. And then he said, ours is at 26.5% gross. And I said, ours is at 33% gross. And then he said, do they have all of their paperwork? He was clearly upset. He wanted us to be terminated for not a technicality, not be allowed to win the bid. And then he said, he was angry and he said, I know the only vending machines in this county are in the high school. He said, but we provide services to two of your other schools, and we delivered to two of your other schools, and you said, Buchanan Upshur Middle School and WD. And he said, WD, and you said Washington District. And then he said, well, that's not going to be able to happen now. He goes, I don't think that's going to be able to happen now.
Can I just say what my perception is of what happened? In the meeting, Mr. Venn started asking some questions. I was trying to be very clear that honestly what you bid that's before you has nothing to do with anything that's happening at Washington District or anywhere else. Because whoever wins this bid would be the person whoever has to work with. And now he did bring that up. And I said to him, it didn't mean anything what was said in that meeting. I couldn't say anything one way or the other. The criteria that we chose to go with Mr. Venn had nothing to do with anything other than the cost to the students of Upshur County at the high school in the vending machines was going to be considerably more. So when Mr. Carver and I and the team, we looked at it, we were only looking at what you see before you, which was this is what they told us they were going to sell their product for. And this is how much commission. I tried to explain to Patrick Martin that it's a little bit different when you're dealing with the school system because we're not out to make money here. That's not the huge goal. We want to provide a service to the students. And I kept reviewing what was in the bid contract of the criteria. And our criteria is what the product is going to be, how much it's going to cost, and what's overall the best. Now, what happened in that meeting, I had no connection of that until they brought that up. I asked my secretary who was witness to it all, and I did not think, and without Mr. Venn here to say what happened, it's just somebody saying, somebody said something and somebody saying they didn't. Because in no way did I want to not hurt anything. But the meeting itself, what we evaluated was strictly based on the cost it was going to cost in those machines, and the overall look at it, we were trying to save the kids some money and look at who was the best overall. And that's where we came to the decision. It did not have to do with anything else. It was the bid before us. And I've explained that several times.
If I may address that, I have the bid, invitation to bid, and there is nothing in there that deals with any bid matrix, nor does it address anywhere in these documents the cost of, per bag or per unit for the students. In fact, it's ludicrous to say that we're not concerned about how much money we're going to make when the sole criteria in the written bid proposal is the amount of commission being submitted.
That's not the sole criteria.
Well,
there's several things down there talk about it, because I would love to be able to just went straight, but there's more than one criteria. And if you wanted to show them the bid, it's on page 6. On page 6, and then it actually goes on to the next page, and it's actually the bid language is quite vague. You know, it is quite vague, but it actually says that whatever it would be to the benefit of the overall, and that's where we made our decision. I mean, that's just basically it.
Well, I read it, it doesn't say anything about cost per unit. My client complied with the specific language that's contained within a written invitation to bid. He met that criteria, and further, there's some supplemental specifications that preclude side arrangements, such as what Mr. Venn has been offering with these wholesale prices to the middle school in Washington District. So to the extent that we're looking at what the board submitted as a written invitation for bid, what the specs are, and what the board can consider in its criteria, we've met those. And I think the bid should be awarded to Superior Vending.
You even asked in the meeting, should that have been a different, that should have been a separate bid? Do you think that should have been a separate bid? And you looked at Mr. Raymond and said, do you think that should have been a separate bid? And
No,
he
what I said
no,
was
I
that
don't.
schools cannot go into the contract individually. And when he mentioned it at me, I was confused. Why did he bring that up? Because I was not thinking it had a thing to do with what we were doing.
Because I said I don't
Because I was like,
understand.
why is he, because that was nothing that ever I considered. That's why when he said it, I'm like, well, shouldn't that be a because that was nothing we were considering in this. I'll just.
Because when he said that, because to me, he was sort of threatening, because he was angry. Because we have competed with Mr. Venn before, and that happened. The gross, and we lost against Mr. Venn. He
I
won.
know that.
But I asked.
I think this is a blank copy of it. And this is also the bid language this actual bid was approved by the state from Doddridge County because it's the first time we've bid it in several years. And so we used and updated the newest language, and here are the specs that are on page 6, and then any of the next page says what's up to the board's discretion. But the specs are that whole page and at the bottom of page 6.
What was the process for putting out the invitation?
We sent the invitations out, and Superior was very good because they had not been in this process before. I mean, the last time, and they had called me, and we didn't have any extension. So the process was they contacted me by phone. We had a list of vendors we sent them out to. The two that responded were Superior and Mr. Venn, are the two that responded to the bid, and it was all written and turned in.
What did you, when they called you to?
Oh, I said, I'm going to make sure I call you, and actually, sorry.
What did you give them? Did they get a
Yes.
copy of this?
Yes.
Whole 6-page?
Yeah, and they had to have it turned in by that Monday, I forget what the exact date it was, at 11 o'clock. I left our meeting at the college and came over here, and we opened the bids in here.
And who was on the committee, or whoever?
As George and I. That
He was
over.
present.
He wasn't present during the bid opening, but George and I sat down and looked at all the paperwork. Because it is, I just wanted to make sure I wanted to do it right because it's people's livelihood. And I took it really seriously, and then we really thought about which way to go right. I mean, we had to look at the whole picture, and that's what we really tried to do.
Do you have anything you want to add, George? Anything that?
Well, the margin on the products is not the only thing that determines how much profit you're going to make.
Yes.
If the one product is priced much higher than the other product, and you're not going to sell as many of them because people don't want to pay that price, in the end you're not going to make as much money.
And when was all this? When did you review these?
The bids we opened Monday, and I was out here, and we looked at them finally on Wednesday. I mean, we had looked at them twice, but we made the final decision, was it Wednesday, I believe. But we had looked at them several days, and it was a hard decision. It wasn't any, we tried to weigh all the factors that we knew how to. And I certainly didn't know any of the disputes between the two companies, and I did not pick up on that. So I've obviously missed that.
No, it wasn't disputed.
No, I meant what she was saying, that the problems they'd had before is all I was trying to say. I did not get that.
Was Mr. Van present in these? All these meetings? Okay.
Yes, he was.
And do you have a copy of the matrix that you?
We sent it to you all. I think it was sent.
A copy of it. Do you have it?
In considering part of the language here is in the board's advantage. So, George, you're looking at the volume of the sale and the margin, and then the board's advantage. That's part of the criteria in making the right
Yes.
judgment.
If you're looking at selling the same thing for $1 versus 65 cents, obviously that is going to impact how much you're going to sell. So it's not strictly a percentage consideration. You have to look at the volumes, and that some of that is guesswork. Because you're talking about something that's going to occur in the future. But strictly looking at a profit margin on a set price is not going to tell you how much money you're going to make.
And by the same token, that's speculative as to whether you're going to sell more at 65 cents. We don't know. You can't sit here and quantify how much items are going to be sold at a lower price versus at 30 cents higher per bag. But what you have in this bid, the objective criteria is the amount of commission. And that's what was put forth for bid. These are invitations to enter into a contract. We complied with what the board submitted. Mr. Venn did not. And now to add to this some type of criteria, which is called the bid matrix, that was not submitted to the vendors, that they could tailor their bids to meet the other criteria the board was going to look at, makes this bid void. I mean, the whole process would be improper if you're going to consider items that for approval that weren't submitted out there, so that vendors could make their bids meet the criteria.
What's the deadline for approving the bid?
Well, it was to be brought to you all. I mean, we don't have, it's brought to you all. They're just, whoever was going to get the bid would have to be starting up in the schools if we wanted to have anything in the vending machines at the high school. To me, I'm not in, it's whatever. I'd like to have.
Is there a deadline?
There's not a deadline, because we don't have to have a vending bid to begin with. So there is not really a deadline.
We don't
unless
have to provide vending machines or snacks to students in the schools. It's a service that we provide for them.
So it's more like a service.
We're somewhat at a disadvantage. We didn't know that Mr. Martin was going to bring counsel with him this evening, and we don't have our counsel here. I would like to recommend that we pull that recommendation on the bids, at least for the snack vending machines, until we have an opportunity to look more thoroughly into it. I would like to continue with the recommendation on the beverage and water, if that would be permissible to the board. Now, we're not at that stage yet. We're still under the delegation, but I support what we've done. I think we did it correctly. However, I'd like the opportunity to go back and be sure and look at that again, to be sure that Mr. Nanners talks about bid invitations. I'd like to have the opportunity to review that and see that a little more thoroughly.
So we would review it further and then bring it back to a vote?
Yes,
Okay.
at our next meeting.
I'd like for the board to review that as a group. I really think that, and the whole thing, I mean, drinks, everything, I just think that it's all thrown into question, and for me to vote on either one of them at this point, I can't do it in good faith.
I agree with Pat. I think it's a matter of teaching fairness. We want to teach fairness in sports, fairness in academics. Even this can be a fairness lesson. Students, as they operate a vending machine, are going to talk about it in some way or another.
Well, I'm willing to pull that recommendation with the understanding that I do support and think that on the surface and what we've done, we've done it the right way, but I would like some more time to look at it and be sure that that statement is accurate.
Well, and I think we as the board agree we want to review that document also. So, do you have anything further, Mr. Anderson?
Nothing further, thank you.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item.
Just one, would there be a time frame that the board would be looking at that?
Our next scheduled meeting is the 21st of August.
So we will wait until then to discuss it?
Well, we could schedule a special meeting if you'd like to do that, or we could get a small committee together to review it also.
Yeah, I think we probably, personally, my feeling is we ought to go over it pretty in depth. I mean, to understand exactly how it's been laid out and how it was presented, so that we can understand what Mr. Anders is saying, and in turn Mr. Martin, and we can understand what our position is, so that we can understand what we're voting on wholeheartedly.
Since we did not see that document, I think it's best if we have a chance to review that before we make any kind of decision.
Yeah.
So
that's not casting aspersions on anybody.
No.
But there is some doubt thrown, and certainly some accusations that are kind of wild thrown out tonight that I think we ought to put those to rest, and strongly and solidly.
And I certainly appreciate that comment. Yeah. So the latest it would be the 21st, and we'll try to do it sooner than that, and we'll give everybody fair notice as to when that'll be. So instead of the approval,
let's just table that for now.
Yeah.
So we will do I have a motion to table?
I move that we table that recommendation to a later date.
And second, Dr. Almond. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that item will be tabled until the 21st. Or sooner, case may be. And you can be in contact with Mr. Nanners. Is that okay? Mr. Lampton will be in contact with you.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Board member comments.
Well, one of the, and just a comment along the lines of healthy students. I want to invite the board members to meet with Bill Neal, Professor of Pediatrics at WVU. He's going to meet with the doctors of Central West Virginia at Westland in the fall. And they have a proposal to help the kids be more physically fit. It sounds intriguing. So I think it's there's one other program in the nation in Vermont that looks like this, and WVU wants to do something in Central West Virginia. And so I'm going to, y'all get a dinner invitation.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Our next meeting date will be the 21st at 7 o'clock, and we will be at Buchanan Academy. And we'll now go into executive session for personnel. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to go into executive session for personnel, West Virginia Code Section 69A-42A.
Second.